Watkins. I'm the Manager of Climate Prediction Services at the Bureau of Meteorology. Look, yeah, certainly as Scotty said, it's been very cool the last couple of mornings. I know I wore my leg warmers on the bike for the first time this morning, so we've certainly been seeing some things cooling down. It's a little bit different to what we've seen through autumn so far. It's generally been very warm through much of autumn, particularly through southern Australia. We've seen temperatures reasonably well above average through much of the southern states, particularly Victoria and Tasmania. Basically all the eastern states have been in the top 10 in terms of temperature, including Victoria, so we'll get the final results tomorrow when we get the final numbers in, and we'll get the results out to everyone tomorrow after lunchtime. In terms of rainfall, it's also been quite dry through southern Australia over the last few months, with some exceptions where the tropical rainfall has come down from the north. And indeed we saw with Tropical Cyclone Debbie, for instance, bringing lots of moisture down the east coast. But in general, it's been higher pressures and clearer skies for most areas. Just those areas that got the tropical moisture have done a little better. That includes Western Victoria. We've had some great rains in Western Victoria. We saw that during around Anzac Day, so some great rainfall around Anzac Day lifted the soil moisture in those areas. It certainly has given them a great start to the winter and spring crop and pasture growing season. So in terms of the outlook, for the coming months, generally for southern Australia, looking warmer than normal. So particularly through Victoria, we're looking at odds of around about 80% of above normal temperatures. So a milder winter than what we've been seeing in some of the years more recently. In terms of rainfall, again, looking at drier than average conditions for much of southern Australia. For Victoria though, it's generally looking drier through parts of the west of the state, possibly closer to normal through parts of the east. So generally a bit drier, a bit warmer for Victoria over the coming months. In terms of snowfall, well, that's of course not the greatest natural conditions for snowfall, but conversely, in terms of snowfall, these are great conditions for snowmaking, and certainly we'll have these dry, clear nights and very cold and crisp nights. That's really great for the snowmaking. And in terms of skiers, for skiers like myself, lots more of those bluebird days with sunshine and great to get out there. And indeed, possibly a little earlier with the spring snow, but look, very good at snowmaking, very good conditions for snowmaking, and the natural snow will top it up just nicely.
They've had good rain, as you say, for agricultural regions, but is it going to dry out in the next little while in the Mallee Wimmera because they can't get seeding equipment on the ground at the moment? It's been too wet, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, we've certainly seen some quite good rainfalls through the Mallee Wimmera in recent times up there, particularly around those Anzac Day rainfall events. Look, the outlook is for drier than normal conditions through winter. If we do get an El Nino, and the odds are still around 50% or double the normal chance, we're at El Nino watch right now. If we do get an El Nino, that would certainly dry things out through the winter, possibly into the spring as well.
Any idea about spring forecasts, or is it too far out yet?
It's a little early at the moment, but once you get into winter, you tend to be a little more locked into those patterns, particularly the patterns that drive us from the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean. So look, at the moment you would be expecting spring to possibly be a little drier than normal for Victoria, particularly in the west, a little warmer as well, but still a little bit too early to tell for sure.
Gippsland, it's been pretty dry down in patches of Gippsland, hasn't it? Can you offer any comfort for the folk, the dairy farmers down in the Gippsland area, particularly South Gippsland?
Look, South Gippsland has been quite dry there, and into Western Gippsland as well. Look, we are looking at slightly drier than average conditions likely through the winter, but having said that, they're in that part of the world where they can pick up some good cold fronts and get some rainfall at times. It's typically wet in those areas during winter regardless, so even if it's below average, we wouldn't expect it to be no rainfall. We'd expect there to be some reasonable rain events with those cold fronts.
So it's what we're seeing at the moment, a bit of a contrast to what the actual real winter we have in store.
Oh, winter's going to be cool in any year in Melbourne. Typically our temperature is around about 14.5 degrees over winter, which in anyone's language is quite cool. Temperature ranges could be sort of 14 to 18 degrees for Melbourne, so it's still going to be a reasonably cool winter, but it will feel a little bit milder than what the long-term average might suggest.
How does that compare to, say, the last 2 or 3 years, or even just last year in general?
Oh, you're asking me a question
Yeah,
off the top of my head that I
yeah,
probably don't know for Melbourne. Look, we have seen some reasonably warm years over the past few years, or past several years. We've certainly seen some warmer temperatures during the winter periods in southern Victoria. Look, that's not unlikely to change. We expect things to be a little milder than the long-term averages would suggest. Thank you.
Thanks very much.